So good morning everyone.
Good morning.
We'll now continue with the deeper significance of the 10 plagues. And I want to emphasize the following, because this is of great importance for all mankind. But it says by the 10 plagues, and that's why Hashem, He made such enormous miracles in a special manner, and the words used you'll find in the middle of the 10 plagues, Olaman Saper Shemi B'chol Haaretz, so that my name of Hashem will be known in the whole world. And that came through the 10 plagues. How? Because these were plagues to transform one of the greatest tyrants with enormous selfishness, self-centeredness, who made himself into a god, and was the head of this Egyptian empire based upon corruption, upon moral corruption, social corruption, and just worshipping idols, and a completely wrong concept of life, emphasizing the physical aspects. So it collapsed. And how did it collapse? We know this also from Egyptian sources, but mankind knows it from the Bible. As we know that also freedom movements have taken their inspiration from the collapse of Egypt, especially when unfortunately Africans were being sold in America as slaves. So the revolution, the rebellion against enslavement, they took inspiration from Moses, from the 10 plagues, let my people go. And that brought a concept of abolition of hierarchies. Unfortunately, it didn't abolish them entirely, but these lessons have to be learned today as well. Today we have similar problems. So now let's continue, which we reached the concept of Shalach Ami v'ya'avduni. Let my people go so that they may serve me. And now we'll try to understand on a deeper level the specific divisions of 3 times 3 and what they represent. So if you look here on these, on the chart, so you'll see again the division of Tzach, Adash, Ba'achab, which we've explained in various ways what's the threefold division. And now I'm going to introduce you to the following. We know one of the principles of divine justice is shown in life through measure for measure. It means Hashem often gives judgments measure for measure. What lies behind this? This is a way whereby we see purposefulness in history. We realize that history is His story, it's the story of Hashem, His relationship with the world. If human beings follow Hashem, they find blessing. If they go against Hashem, they will find curse. And that gives us hope for the future of mankind. We know that Hashem ultimately controls the world. Therefore, whatever happens, we as Jews have learned from history, have learned from His story, have learned from Yetziat Mitzrayim until today, measure for measure. the way in which mankind and the spiritual models which the people of Israel should be for mankind. We have followed Hashem, and mankind has followed Hashem. There's blessing, and vice versa. It's one of the major principles of understanding his story and understanding the Bible. So, really, if one wants to understand what happened in Egypt, we must go to the first time when this is expressed. Some say it was the first revelation of Hashem to Abraham. Some say it was when he was only age 75. So Hashem prophesied to Abraham what's known as the Brit Ben Abatarim, the covenant between the pieces, which is in the 15th chapter of Genesis, called in the Sir James, in King James version of the Bible into English, the old authorized version in English. It's termed the Holocaust. Why the Holocaust? Because it describes how the animals were cut up into pieces and then they became burnt, or the burning torch went through. And to bring it up to date, there's certainly a hint in that chapter for what unfortunately today we call the Holocaust. How did the Holocaust happen? And why did it happen? And there's a hint because if you look in that chapter, it says, V'hinei tanur ashan belapid eish asher hava bein hagzerim ha'elu. These everything was cut up 3 times, threefold. But what does it say? In the middle there was a smoking oven and a pillar of fire walking through the pieces. What do you mean the smoking oven? So the sages say in the Midrash that it means Shibud Malchiot. It refers to the enormous persecution through which the children of Avraham Avinu would have to pass through the school of suffering. And it culminates in the smoking oven. What is symbolized by the smoking oven? A crematorium. So that in my opinion, I think it's a good interpretation. This was the ultimate type of suffering which the Jewish people would have to go through. And then it says afterwards, you saw carefully in that passage, after this terrible vision, but in Eim Chashicho, it says a great enormous darkness fell upon Avraham Avinu, and the enormous darkness mentioned in 4 expressions, and the 4 expressions refer to the 4 empires that persecuted and banished and tried to exterminate the Jewish people. The culmination is smoking oven. And then it said, but after the smoking oven, it said, Bayom Hahu, on that day, Hashem made a covenant with Avraham Avinu, and there it doesn't mention that you're going to have the land of 7 nations. No, your seed are going to have the land of almost the whole Middle East. Your seed. Because it's true, the seed of Avraham Avinu includes also the seed of Ishmael. So therefore, the whole of the Middle East comes from Avraham Avinu. And the concept of one God exists amongst the Jewish people, exists in Islam. And we're given here the prophecy, that's why it's so important for today to understand this. The prophecy in that 15th chapter of Genesis, which you can look up, so there it says that on that day, look at Rashi, that day is when Am Yisrael will, as it were, the seed of Avraham, will inherit the whole Middle East. So, what do we find today? That the truth is, the Middle East is occupied by the descendants of Avraham Avinu. Not only the people of Israel, also the seed of Ishmael. And those amongst the Muslims who keep the Noahide code and believe in one God and know that God is a God of mercy, and they're utterly opposed to any form of killings, they will become, as the sages say, Gerem Gururim. They'll become Bnei Noach, Noachites who keep the Torah and respect the Jewish people to be the Mamlechet Kohanim. So now, in the light of this, I think of his interpretation of more details of the structure of the plagues, which you've got in front of you, becomes very important for today. Here's a deep explanation, by the way, which is also accepted, and it's outlined already by the Kli Yakar, one of the classical commentators, which you'll find in the Mikroes Gedolos. But Rav Hirsch develops it further. When God revealed what would happen when the descendants of Avraham Avinu would have to enter into land that is not theirs, and then it said, "Va'avadum v'ini otam, ki gei yizaracha be'eretz lohem." Your descendants are going to be aliens in a land that doesn't belong to them. It doesn't define it yet which land it will be. Because this vision was given to Avraham Avinu, according to some when he was still in Babel, according to others when he entered Eretz Israel, Eretz Canaan as it was called then. So it says there that your descendants will be there 400 years. And what will the host nation do where you are aliens? You won't only be aliens, you'll be slaves. And you'll be tortured. So there's three things: Geirut, Avdut, Inui. In three ways, your descendants are going to have to go through the school of suffering. One is, you'll be aliens, strangers, not your land at all. Number two, you'll be made slaves. And number three, you'll be tortured. So, this was said at what we call the Bris Bein Absorim, the covenant between the parts, where it was told in chapter 15 of Bereshit, verse 1 to 21. Gei Zarachem, your seed will be strangers in a land which is not theirs, and the people will enslave them and torture them. So we see there are three levels of this decree. There'll be aliens. There's one level separating the Jews from the Gentiles, the Hebrews as they were then. The second is that the Gentiles make the Hebrews their slaves. The third level is they shall stay small because they're tortured and killed. This came just like this. First, I want to put this in the concept of his story. And I'm going to connect it, I'm going to develop this concept to explain what unfortunately we've experienced in a more intensive measure. Going back to the principle that the Exodus from Egypt gives us lessons how to understand, as many people ask the question, why does God bring such a terrible Holocaust upon the Jewish people, exterminating a third of our nation by not only killing them, gassing them, but burning them up, and it did it also to other weaker elements of the population. Be'eretz lo lahem. So I'll tell you something interesting. They've come out, there were one of the great French thinkers, maybe you heard of him, André Neher. You heard of him, Daniel? André Neher. He lived in Strasbourg. André Neher was probably the greatest recent Jewish philosopher from France. And he gave out a booklet where he demonstrates the complete parallel between Paro's attempts to exterminate the people of Israel and the attempt of his successor called Hitler יימח שמו. Paro's, you see, same pattern, exactly the same. We started with the propaganda, like Hitler did. You know, the Jews are alien people, and they take over the country. You know, because the Jews were, I suppose, either Yosef, who really brought blessing to the country, and his father even more blessing, was forgotten, what the Jews had done. So therefore, this new Paro, he said, let's go and use an intelligent manner whereby we get rid of these people, because they're taking over Egypt, so he claimed. You'll find them everywhere. And the truth is, to some extent, the fault of the Jews, the fault of the Hebrews. As the sages say, the people of Israel were given the land of Goshen, but they didn't all stay in Goshen. They went and intermingled with Egyptian society. And it says they went into their place of entertainment. And they became part of the nation because they had abilities. And some of them were the children of Yaakov Avinu. Some of them had the brilliance of Yosef, I suppose. And the people, so Paro said, Paro knew that really they believe in one God, which is a challenge to me. All right, my predecessor Paro, he came to believe in Hashem. And you've got this princess, I suppose she was becoming, as it were, religious in secret. So, he didn't know what was going to happen. But still he said, they're a great threat to the future of the Egyptian empire. So he found different ways. In fact, his first, in order not to appear that he's just actually against Jews, he said, well, every child that's born needs to have an examination by the secret police. In the end, it turned out that they made sure that it was the Hebrews whose sons were drowned in the Nile. Anyway, what he says here is very interesting. Under Neha, he brings in his, we had it in the yeshiva some time ago, I don't know if it's still around. You take the Haggadah, but there have been other Haggadot on the same lines. Take the Haggadah Pesach, which describes the plagues and everything else, and take Egyptian sources. And there's so many sources, both from the Bible, as well as from today from excavations. So you can have things that are pictures of what took place, of the enslavement, of the torture. So you can draw a complete parallel to this. So that's why when I first gave this talk, I didn't bring this in so much, but now I'm connected even more than any other time. Because if you look carefully, later on, when Ishmael didn't go in the right direction, so we see as follows. Very interesting. As long as Ishmael was the only son, so Hashem and hoped also, maybe Ishmael is going to be one of the true seeds of Abraham and fulfill the blessing that was promised to Abraham because of his great Torah Chesed and the way he spread the belief in one God. And Ishmael also believed in one God. And Ishmael was also willing to do Brit Milah, make a covenant with Hashem. But then it says to your seed, I'm going to give this land, mentions the 7 nations. The Brit Ben Abtarim says, Hashem made a covenant with Avraham Avinu, he's given him 10 nations. Bayom Ahu. So the sages say, when will this become fulfilled? Because the 10 nations go up to the Euphrates, and they include the Nile. So it's a bit of North Africa, the fertile part, and more or less the whole of the Middle East. It's going to be all part of the inheritance of Avraham Avinu. So I say, what Bayom Ahu mean? Bayom Ahu, when there's the Holocaust. I explained that the first mention of the Holocaust in the Tanakh is the smoking oven. The smoking oven means the most severe aspect of enslavement by the empires of the world, who seek to exterminate the Jewish people. And we, our former generation, we know all about it. We're still living the trauma of it. And in the Muslim world today, we are hoping, and we can see there are signs that it might work out, that what are termed in both in America and here, in America, in fact, there's been an organization, the Reform of Islam. The Reform of Islam movement is one which is also supported by Jews who know that according to the Quran, if you read it in the right manner, there's no mention against the Jewish people in such a manner, as they say. Not even mention that Jerusalem's got anything to do with Islam. And there's certainly the way, just like we know, even if a person today just reads the Tanakh from the eyes, let's say, of no knowledge of the deeper oral tradition of the Jewish people, then he may also say, okay, the Jews also believed in killing. Yeah? Hashem said kill, Hashem said go into war. But they don't realize that there's an oral tradition that accompanies the whole of the Bible, and which gives us, we can call it, the interpretation of the Bible by those to whom it was addressed. It was addressed to the Jewish people. And the Jewish people knew how to interpret the text of the Bible. When it says in the Bible, an eye for an eye, for example, so we know it means monetary payment for the loss of somebody else's eye which you've caused. So why say an eye for an eye? Because the written text wants to tell us that your fellow man's eye, you've got to regard your fellow man like yourself. And therefore justly or careful and very concerned. If you lose an eye, you should be equally concerned if your fellow man loses an eye. And don't argue about it. Therefore you have to pay 5 forms of compensation to the person whose eye you have damaged, even if you did it by mistake, because it's just as valuable as it is. So therefore you've got to do everything possible. But it does not mean take out his eye. But we know that. That's the Jewish interpretation. Similarly also, it's clear, also according to oral tradition, that the Torah of Hashem, which comes from him, says that if there is a murderer and he's out to kill other people, then he who comes to kill you, kill him first. Because there's a limit to the loving kindness. In fact, it's the other way around. For the sake of loving kindness, you have to do it. Because there's the right side and the left side. That's what we often describe. And that's the whole basis of the whole Bible and all the prophets. We don't say that we're going to allow corruption and social evils that they can go unpunished because it's to let people do what they want. No, there's a limit. What's in the eyes of Hashem, there's a limit. And we, as his partners in this world, we have to do our part. But we've got no right to kill a person because we hate him. No, that's forbidden. You can only kill him, you've got to spread love, you've got to kill people because you love mankind. So if there's a killer who says, I want to kill, now there's a debate, in fact, came out today, the headline, the foreign minister of Sweden says we've got to investigate if Israel gives the terrorists always a complete judgment before they kill him. If you know there's a terrorist who doesn't mind being killed to kill others, what, you're going to let him loose? And even today there was a complaint in the Knesset. Yesterday was the debate where one of the heads of the secret police, they say, because we don't have enough proof sometimes, we're not allowed to keep these people who want to kill others and haven't changed their ideas. And we know quite well they're out to kill others and they don't care, even if they lose their life. So we have to release them because we haven't got enough proof. We've got circumstantial proof. But also what happens, they say the proof, the Supreme Court says And the law also says that you've got to bring that proof in front of an independent court, the Supreme Court, one of the courts of justice in Israel. And if you, the secret police, you've got a lot of testimonies recorded where they say, we murdered, we killed so-and-so, and want to kill others, it doesn't count. Because it's not good enough if they hear it. They complained they had a meeting in the committee for security, a discussion about this. So Avigdor Lieberman, I'm pleased, he said, it's not the right approach. But those who definitely intend, we've got clear evidence recorded, but it was recorded by the secret police. What do you mean it doesn't count? And we know these people, and there's so many murders that take place by released terrorists, and we have to release them according to the Chok. So I think he said we've got to change the Chok because we're dealing here with murder. I mean, I suppose the only time when the Europeans and others will really learn the lesson is when they get hurt. Well, Sweden hasn't had enough terrorist attacks yet, and Daesh haven't reached sufficiently to their communities. So, but this is these people who have a policy. We want to kill people, and fancy coming up with a statement. As some people did, I think even Obama came up with a statement that who knows whether the terrorists in the supermarket in France, in Paris. Daniel, listen to this. Daniel, listen. The supermarket in Paris. Yeah. There's a recording of how the terrorist who was there, he had a debate with one of the Jewish workers whom they held hostage, and they asked him, "Why do you?" So he even admitted, "Oh, the problem with you Jews," so he said, "you love life, and we love death." That's his words. And I don't know if they've caught them all yet. Have they caught all the terrorists who went and killed the people in the Paris supermarket? Have they caught them all? Not up to date. You should know. Anyway, so they come out. I think the Swedish Foreign Minister and Obama, they came out. Who knows? Who knows if they're really murderers? It's perhaps only because what's her words? It's because of the way in which the Palestinian people they feel in despair. They don't know what to do, and that's why they're killing. This person wasn't in despair. It didn't say because I'm in despair, this terrorist. He said, no, my policy is to kill. I'm fulfilling the greatest duty. And now also there's the whole debate about, they caught this terrorist with a machine gun, who was previously, he was a good worker, he could be loyal to working for some Jewish firm, and they paid him well, and he was liked by everybody, very nice person. Then he comes with a machine gun and starts killing anyone in the area. And then he escaped, and now they found him, they killed him. So also there's a whole uproar. They don't want to give over the body to the Palestinians. The Palestinians are waiting for the funeral to make a whole festivity out of it. He's a great hero. See, and therefore they want to wait, for the funeral. After all, he's under the control now. The body's under control of Israel. So you see what's going on today. But there is a movement of reform. That is you can say that's the light at the end of the tunnel, which I think will happen in due course. In fact, all the way in which Daesh and Iran are competing, who can do more harm and destruction in the Muslim world, not in the European world. Who do more harm in the European world, even the American world. More people realize it. They realize that we are the only speck in the Middle East, apart from a small group, including the Kurdim. The Kurdim are much better. They have a true moral Quranic approach to Islam, and there is a movement like that. I mean, let's say the head of Islam in Italy, in Rome, it's called Sheikh Palazzi. He is very much against this distortion of Quranic Islamic teachings. I've got a special interest in this Because I had an uncle who learned Torah, but he decided he's going to study Islam. So he became a professor of Islam in Calcutta University. He became a professor of Islam in Frankfurt University, and he founded the part of Islam, the Hebrew University. And he wrote books. He linked up with true moral interpreters of the Quran. And he even wrote books on the relationship between Quran and Jewish traditions. There are many Jewish traditions and midrashim which incorporate the Quran. And he says, all right, you can always take it out of context and distort them. Like people did that when there was a question of slavery, which we discussed before, we had a similar situation. People go and, they quote the devil. They mean the devil, and then they go and use a biblical text to prove it. And you've got to understand what's going on here. I mean, even the whole theory of racialism, some say, well, it says about Shem, Chom, V'Yefes, the division of the races. So you see division of the races is part of the Bible. It's meant, but if you study the Bible properly, you'll see when afterwards it describes the way in which all the nations, 70 nations, came from these three, it's not racial. Racial has to do with biology, has to do with the genetical connection which exists between parents and children. That's one of the elements of deciding who belongs to a national group. But the Torah emphasizes there are 4 elements, it says there. One element is ethnic, has to do with. Another element is language. Another element is geography. Another element is culture. And that's the truth until today, how nations develop and groups of nations develop. It's anti-racial because it's spiritual intermingling. And then when Sancheriv came, and his policy was, when Assyria was the greatest force in the Middle East, so his policy was, in order that groups should not go and rebel against his empire, so therefore he did transmigration of all populations that he conquered. They shouldn't stay in their own area, and as a result they became dispersed, they became completely intermingled. So this explains to us today's situation, that also in the Middle Eastern world there are groups that, like this reform movement in America, there's also gradually is building up a coalition. Saudi Arabia and the Kurdim, they're more in favor of a more peaceful solution instead of the different groups of Islam warring with one another. Some's got to be the Sunnis and Sufis and so on. In any case, this is all hinted at in the way in which the seed of Abraham includes also Islam. So we hope the time will come, as it says there, Bayom Ahu means after the Holocaust, as we described, then the world will change, and then the redemption will come, where the Middle East will, all of it, recognize one God, the unity of God, producing the unity of life, and producing the acceptance by all mankind ultimately of the Noahide Code. So look, this is now how we can understand the principle measure for measure. Because the threefold, the Tzach, Adash, Ba'achab, which we discussed already quite at length. So this is the deep explanation of Kli Yakor and Rav Hirsch. It's measure for measure. In other words, the harm that Egyptians are doing would divide into 3 groups. One is to make the group feel aliens. That's when it started in Germany. Yeah, to make a division. We don't allow Jews any of the top professions. We don't allow Jews in any position in the government. Came the emancipation. They said, we do allow Jews. But then came Hitler and said, no, we must drive away the Jews. The Jews must give up all their positions. My father was such a loyal German that in the First World War he became an officer, and he even was injured, a big officer, and he became a prisoner, and then he had to be healed, and he won the Iron Cross. So what did he do with it? When Hitler started, he returned the Iron Cross. And after a time he saw, in any case, he saw that he's not going to be able to carry on his profession. So Baruch Hashem, that accounts for the ability of me to sit here and give you shiur. So he came out early. We tried to persuade all the family to do the same. My uncle, who was a rabbi in Frankfurt, I still remember how he came to our house in Hampstead. In fact, we were living in the house, and next door to us there was a German citizen who we suspected was really a spy. So, and when I went to school first, as a boy, I came out at the age of 6. No, there wasn't Jewish school around. I went to non-Jewish school. So some of the time I couldn't speak much English at all. And I came with some also German style dress. So, you know, they even started saying, oh, you're a Nazi, obviously. Perhaps you're a Nazi spy. It took time for the teachers to accept us, and also then the fellow young children in that class. And then, so they started making us aliens in Germany. The second thing is, then they enslaved the Jewish people, sent them to slave camps. That happened, you know, people went, slave camps exist. And my uncle, he came to us in 1938, just before the war, because he was Rabbi of a killer. We tried to persuade him, stay with us, don't go back, what happened to you? He said, no, I'm not leaving my community. How can I leave when the community are in trouble? I've got to be with them. And he was a rabbi who did everything for others, my uncle Yaakov. Unfortunately, the Nazis got hold of him and killed him. He killed him in they tortured him actually. They tortured him till he became a zombie. Okay. That's one uncle. Another uncle of mine, who was in Paris, well, he didn't escape, because he also felt he had a duty with his community, and he looked a lot after children in the time of the war, and tried to get all the children out from France when it was occupied by the Germans. And on a certain occasion, when he took them to the border with Switzerland, all types of arrangements to get them over the border in Switzerland. So he spoke, and for a few minutes he spoke in German instead of in French. So they suspected, oh, you're bringing Jewish children. So they took him, and he was killed in Auschwitz. A whole story about it, many stories about that. So this is what happened. But that's where's the first mention of all this? In the Parsha of the week. Because what did Paro do? Enslaved them. And then what did he do? He killed them. All the boys drowned in the Nile. And the girls raised them up, raped them. That was it. That was to finish off the people. So, now it's like this. Since Hashem punishes Midah Keneged Midah, so therefore, first, if you look at the three Tetzach, the blood, he brought them alienation, measure for measure. Because they would do these three levels. So first he gave them alienation, gave slaves. Then he gave them hardship. The blood made fuel strangers in their own land. The frogs entered their houses, their beds, and went wherever they were and made them like slaves. And that's why it describes in the Chumash. What was the plague? The frogs, it entered their bakery. Yeah, they couldn't eat the bread. It entered the bedrooms. They couldn't sleep. It entered, it says there, the most secret places where Paro was. Yeah, everywhere in the food, every place was food. The frogs spread over the whole country to torture them. They became slaves to the frogs. That was the second level. And then came the lice and tortured their bodies. The lice, even the torture, all the time that lice, they had pain from all the lice, which went all over, torture. That's the first three, Tetzach. Then the second three, which is Adash, wild animals, plague and boils. It's also the three levels. The wild beasts occupied the land, and they took over the whole of Egypt. Instead of their being able to use their cattle for anything, or any animals, no, and walk also, instead of being able to walk around outside their houses, they couldn't, because everything was filled with wild beasts who were attacking all living beings, and also all human beings. So they felt like strangers. Cattle had previously worked the land. After the plague, they died. So people had to do the jobs previously done by the animals. There were no animals left to do the work. Therefore, who became slaves? The people themselves. Then came the boils, and the boils tortured their bodies. They had to run away. Then afterwards, when you come to the last three, hail, locust, and darkness also have the three levels. Because when the hail came, they had to find protection. They couldn't go out at all. They were aliens in their land. When the locusts ate all their crops, people had to labor as slaves to keep alive. When the darkness came, caused them anguish and physical pain. The ultimate was the death of the firstborn. So it was the torture which culminated in the death of the people who considered the family leaders, the Bochorim. So we find here midah keneged midah, measure for measure. Now, that's one matter. Now let's go to another aspect of all this, that there's a very unusual expression used by all the plagues in different ways. There are words, "Vayachbed et libo, vayachzek et libo." You look through the 10 plagues now they're described, Pharaoh hardened his heart. And then after it says Hashem hardened his heart, also using different expressions. So this raises the question, what is the relationship between Hashem and Pharaoh, or between Hashem and the kings, the leaders of the nations, and also how do we understand the relationship of the freedom of will and the control of Hashem, and even more so, how do we relate the foreknowledge of Hashem with the freedom of man? And this all enters into the pattern of the 10 plagues. But I tell you, it's not. I want to stop here today with this exposition, but I haven't given you a chance to ask questions. And this is a very important question, which I'll continue with next week. Which is a question which I frequently receive from students: how do you relate freedom of will with causality, and how do you relate it to God's control and God's foreknowledge? So all this intertwined with the 10 plagues, because Yetziat Mitzrayim is a model for the people of Israel in many aspects, to understand how history is his story, is the story of the power of God, the knowledge of God, and the freedom of man. And how do we understand this? How does it work? How does it work with the nations? How does it work with individuals? So this is a very important question, which is solved, to go into more deeply, into especially this question of hardening the heart. If man is free, if his heart becomes hardened by Hashem, he's not free anymore.
When do we ask the questions, tomorrow? Or?
No.